Eleanor had always believed that love was a quiet thing, something that aged like oak, not like wine. It didn't sparkle or dazzle anymore, not after 41 years of marriage, but it held weight. It meant showing up. And until that weekend, she thought Harold still did. Her 68th birthday was coming up. Eleanor hadn't mentioned it much. She never made a fuss. But Harold had, strangely. For weeks, he'd dropped little hints. "Pack light," he'd said with a twinkle in his eye. "Don't worry about dinner. I've got it all handled this year." That alone felt like a surprise. He hadn't handled much of anything for years. So when he pulled up in front of their home on Friday morning with 2 overnight bags already packed in the trunk and a folded itinerary on the dashboard, Eleanor blinked at him as if seeing him anew. "A weekend getaway," he said, beaming. "Just us." It was unlike him. Harold wasn't the romantic gesture type. That part of him had withered long ago, replaced by half-hearted nods and missed anniversaries. But here he was, opening her door, giving her that boyish grin she hadn't seen in decades. They drove upstate in comfortable silence, the landscape growing quieter, woods thicker, road more gravel than asphalt. Eleanor watched the trees sway as if trying to remind her how long it had been since someone did something for her, not because of her. When they pulled into the long dirt driveway of the Airbnb, Eleanor was caught off guard. The house looked like something out of a boutique magazine. Modern but rustic, nestled in evergreens, with wraparound glass and a view of a lake so still it felt painted. "You booked this?" she asked softly. Harold just smiled. "All yours, birthday girl." The host greeted them at the door, and that's when the world shifted. She was younger, 30 maybe, tall, glossy dark hair tied back in a loose knot, a turtleneck that clung too perfectly to her frame. Her name was Bella. "Welcome," she said, stepping forward with a practiced warmth that felt more like performance than hospitality. Eleanor blinked. Bella's eyes weren't on her. They were on Harold. A flicker too long, a smile a touch too soft. Eleanor noticed it, the same way you notice when a wine glass is missing from the table. You're not sure when it happened, only that something isn't right. Bella gave them a tour of the house like she was showing off her favorite toy. Harold kept nodding, asking questions he usually couldn't care less about. Flooring, lighting, how she got the windows to open so seamlessly. He hates anything with hinges, Eleanor thought absently. So why was he suddenly an expert? That night they sat by the fireplace in the open-concept living room. Eleanor sipped tea from a ceramic mug Bella had handed her herself. She wasn't being paranoid. She wasn't jealous. But something in the way Bella lingered, dropping off extra blankets without being asked, chuckling at Harold's outdated jokes like they were stand-up material, unnerved her. At one point, Harold excused himself to go check the car. He was gone longer than made sense. When Eleanor peeked through the curtain, she saw Bella's silhouette by the side shed. The motion light clicked on, and there he was, laughing, talking, too close. They didn't touch, not that time, but it wasn't nothing. It was the kind of moment that rewrites others. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed that night, her tea growing cold in her hands. 41 years, and she had to ask herself a question she never wanted to. Had she ever really known him? The soft shuffle of Harold coming back in didn't break her stare. He kissed her cheek. She turned away. "Too tired?" he asked. She nodded, and lied. In the dark, Eleanor's eyes stayed open long after Harold's breath evened out beside her. Her heart, usually so steady, beat fast, not from rage, not yet, but from a gnawing certainty. Something was already broken, and the weekend had just begun. The next morning, Eleanor rose before the sun. It wasn't the cold mountain air that had woken her. It was the weight in her chest. That heavy, breathless kind of ache that creeps in when you realize something precious might be slipping through your fingers. Harold was still asleep, snoring lightly. His face was turned away from her, like it always was now. For a brief moment, she watched him, hoping to find something familiar in the man she'd spent most of her life beside. But his expression gave nothing away. He looked like a man without secrets, and that, more than anything, made her stomach twist. She made coffee in the small kitchen before anyone else stirred. The view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking. Mist curled across the lake like steam rising from a forgotten kettle. The trees stood still, as if even nature was holding its breath. Bella appeared a little after 7, too early, wearing a robe, plush, white, far too casual for a professional host. "Oh, good morning," she said, clearly startled by Eleanor's presence. Eleanor offered a polite smile. "I thought we had the place to ourselves." Bella chuckled softly. "I live in the guest house around back. Sometimes I pop in early to check the wood stove. Old houses like this have moods." It was a clever excuse. Plausible. Perfectly rehearsed. But Eleanor's eyes narrowed at the towel-damp hair, the bare feet, the way Bella didn't look away fast enough. She was comfortable here. Too comfortable. As if this house wasn't just a business. It was a stage, and Eleanor was the unwanted extra in a script she hadn't been handed. Later, Harold came into the kitchen, freshly shaved, humming a tune he hadn't whistled in years. "You're up early," he said, kissing the top of Eleanor's head like it was routine. She shrugged, just taking it all in. He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, gently steering her toward the porch. "I booked a couple's massage, right here overlooking the lake. What do you think?" It should have felt thoughtful, romantic even, but Eleanor couldn't stop the quiet alarm bells. Harold wasn't the planning type. He barely remembered her birthday last year. How had he pulled all this together so perfectly this time? The massage therapist was professional and kind, but Eleanor's body remained tense the entire session, no matter how many times the woman told her to relax into it. She couldn't, because every sound from inside the house, every footstep, every door creak, made her heart knock in her chest. That evening, Bella invited them to a private dinner prepared by a local chef she knew personally. Harold lit up at the offer. "Sounds perfect," he said. "Right, Elle?" Eleanor nodded, though her gut screamed otherwise. The dining setup was arranged on the back deck, strung with warm fairy lights and candles that flickered against the trees. It was beautiful. Eleanor couldn't deny that. Every detail had been curated to look and feel magical. But Eleanor knew something else too. It wasn't designed for her. The way Bella poured Harold's wine, fingers grazing his hand. The way she leaned in when he spoke, laughing just a second too long. The way Harold never once glanced at Eleanor the entire dinner, like she was already a shadow. Eleanor stared down at her untouched dessert, the sugared berries melting slowly into the cream. Her appetite had vanished. So had her trust. "Everything okay?" Bella asked gently, tilting her head just so. Eleanor met her eyes for the first time and didn't blink. "Lovely evening, really." But her tone was cool, measured, the kind of tone a woman uses when she knows she's being handled. When dinner ended, Harold offered to help Bella clean up. Of course he did. Eleanor stayed on the deck, listening. The laughter, the clinking glasses, and then silence. A long, heavy pause that didn't sound like conversation. When Harold returned, his shirt was untucked. His cheeks were flushed. He carried 2 leftover chocolate truffles in a napkin and placed one in her palm. "Thought you might want one for later." Eleanor stared at the candy, then at him. She didn't say a word, because the pieces were falling into place now. The packed bags, the early check-in, the cozy robe, the perfectly rehearsed hospitality, the gleam in Harold's eye that had nothing to do with her birthday. This wasn't just a surprise weekend trip. It was a rendezvous, and Eleanor had just been invited to the wrong party. That night, Eleanor pretended to sleep. She lay on her side facing the window, letting the faint hum of crickets and the distant lapping of the lake lull Harold into thinking she had drifted off. But her eyes remained open, fixed on the blurry reflection of the moon in the glass. Harold was on his phone longer than usual. She felt the subtle shift in the mattress when he turned away from her and tapped quietly. Too quietly, as if he was trying not to be heard. There was no glow, no ringtone, just brief buzzes. He was using silent mode. He never used silent mode. Eleanor listened to each vibration like it was a heartbeat that didn't belong in her bed. Eventually, his breath grew steady, and Eleanor slipped out from under the quilt. She didn't tiptoe. She moved with the slow precision of a woman who was done being careful. In the hallway, the dim motion sensor lights flickered on. She followed the trail of Harold's phone cord to the side table in the living room. The device was still unlocked. His forgetfulness, for once, served her. She didn't need to go far. There it was. Bella on top of his text list, a thread full of, "See you soon," and "Can't wait for us." And worst of all, she has no idea. Eleanor's breath caught, but she didn't make a sound. Her hands trembled, not from rage, but something colder, something deeper, the kind of hurt that doesn't scream. It stares. There were photos too. Nothing explicit, just familiar. Bella in the mirror wearing Harold's old flannel. Bella's dog Harold claimed to be allergic to, curled beside him on the porch. Bella's hand in Harold's, shot from behind, like they were hiding in plain sight. She closed the phone and stared out the window. Bella's guest house sat like a second secret on the edge of the woods. The light in the window was still on. She wasn't going to cry. Not yet. Instead, Eleanor walked barefoot to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. The sound of the fridge door closing echoed louder than she expected. She paused, listening. A floorboard creaked behind her. It was Bella. She had come inside without knocking. Her robe was tied again, hair pulled back this time. She looked composed, effortlessly so. "Couldn't sleep?" Bella asked too gently. Eleanor's face didn't move. "I'm used to sleeping next to someone I trust. Tonight's a bit different." Bella's smile faltered for half a second, just long enough to expose the crack. "I'm sorry if I've made things uncomfortable," she offered, stepping closer. "This was meant to be a beautiful weekend. I take pride in creating that for couples." Eleanor set the glass down. "Is that what you call it? Creating moments? Is Harold just another one of your guests, or is this part of your package?" Bella blinked. Her practiced charm slipped again. "I don't know what you think you saw." "I read what you wrote," Eleanor interrupted, "and I've seen what you don't bother to hide." The air between them turned sharp. Bella's hands tensed around her robe belt. "Maybe you should talk to him." "Oh, I will," Eleanor said, her voice quiet but unshakable. "But first I wanted to see what you look like when someone finally saw you. Really saw you." For a split second, Bella dropped the mask. The guilt didn't surface. The arrogance did. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she said coolly. "But Harold hasn't loved you in years. He told me himself." Eleanor's chin lifted. Her spine straightened like a woman remembering her worth. "Then he's a coward," she replied. "And you're a convenience. A younger mirror that flatters an old man's ego." Bella's eyes narrowed, but Eleanor didn't flinch. She turned, collected her glass of water, and walked calmly back toward the bedroom. "Tell him I said goodnight," she added over her shoulder. She didn't slam the door. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Because in that single exchange, Bella realized something Harold hadn't. Eleanor may have been the wife they thought they could deceive quietly, but now she was awake, and nothing would go unnoticed again. Morning light filtered into the bedroom through sheer curtains, illuminating Eleanor's face as she sat upright, fully dressed, waiting. She hadn't slept a minute. She didn't need rest. She needed resolve, the kind that builds not in rage but in realization. Harold stirred, then groaned. "You're up already?" he mumbled, stretching like a man who still believed his life was intact. "I've been up a while," she replied simply, not looking at him. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Everything okay?" Eleanor finally turned to face him, calm, unreadable. "You tell me." There was a pause. Harold tilted his head, pretending not to understand. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I had a conversation with Bella last night," she said, her voice even, "and I went through your phone." The words dropped like bricks in the room. No yelling, no drama, just truth. Harold's face drained of color. You went through my—" "I did," she cut in, "because you stopped looking me in the eye months ago, because your kindness felt manufactured, because I've known you for over 40 years, and last night I realized I don't know you at all." He stammered. "It's not what you think, Elle. I mean, yes, we've been talking, but it's not some affair. She's just someone I connect with. We've had conversations, and I needed someone who—" "Harold." Eleanor didn't raise her voice, but the warning in her tone made him shut his mouth. She wore your flannel. She called you ours. And she mocked me to my face. This wasn't a conversation. It was betrayal with extra bedding and a candlelit view. He stood abruptly. It just happened, all right? I didn't plan this. Eleanor rose to meet him. You booked this trip, Harold. You chose her house. You planned everything. His hands flew up. I just wanted to feel something again. Something new. I didn't think. No, she interrupted. You didn't think. Not about me. Not about us. Not about the woman who raised your children. Stood by you. Through your surgeries, buried your mother when you couldn't bear to see her in the hospital. Her voice cracked for the first time, but just barely. I spent years waiting for you to notice when I was fading, to care when I sat alone at dinners you skipped for work. I was faithful even when it was thankless. And you repay that with this? A weekend love nest with a woman who opens wine better than she opens books? Harold sat back down, the weight of her words hitting harder than any scream. Eleanor turned away, hands on her hips, breathing through the tremble in her chest. Then she glanced at the fireplace mantel. Her eyes caught a guest book, open, pages filled with glowing reviews. The host is exceptional. Such warmth, such charm, and one entry written in a familiar hand. Third visit here. Each one better than the last. Thanks for the quiet magic, Bella. H. Third visit. Eleanor blinked hard. This wasn't your first time, she said. Harold's head dropped. She stepped back. You brought me here to your affair location. Not even somewhere new. Just your usual. I didn't know how else to end it, he murmured. Eleanor laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You don't end an affair by bringing your wife into its walls. You do that when you want to rewrite history. Make her feel small. Make her the outsider. A silence filled the room. Eleanor walked toward the suitcase she had repacked that morning, slowly, gracefully. I'm leaving, she said. Harold's head shot up. Elle, don't be dramatic. She zipped the bag with finality. This isn't drama, Harold. This is dignity. He stood again, reaching for her arm. We can talk about this. You don't have to go now. She pulled away. I should have left last night. Then she paused, glancing around the tastefully staged Airbnb. But I wanted the host to see me walk out whole. Not broken, not fooled. Whole. With that, she picked up her suitcase and walked to the door. I'll be at Claire's, she said, referencing their oldest daughter. Don't call, don't follow. I'll contact you when I'm ready to discuss the rest. Harold stood there, shirt wrinkled, mouth open, a man watching everything he thought he controlled vanish in front of him. And Eleanor? She walked out into the morning light, for the first time in years feeling the sun on her face, not as a wife, but as a woman stepping back into her power. Claire answered the door before Eleanor even knocked. It was as if she'd been waiting there, heart pounding, eyes red from what could have been worry or instinct. Mom, she breathed. What happened? Eleanor didn't speak at first. She simply stepped through the doorway, let the bag slip from her hand onto the hardwood floor, and exhaled. Her shoulders dropped with the weight she'd carried through that entire weekend. The weight of betrayal, of silence, of knowing she had been humiliated in a place meant to celebrate her life. Claire pulled her into a hug, not one of those soft, polite ones. No, this was tight, fierce, protective, the kind that said, "You're safe now." I made tea, Claire whispered, already guiding her into the kitchen. I didn't know why, but I just felt like something was wrong. Eleanor sat at the table, hands wrapped around a warm mug, though she hadn't taken a sip. Her eyes were distant, her voice steady. He took me to a house he's been renting for months. It was meant to be a birthday surprise. Claire's jaw tensed. And the host? Eleanor nodded. Bella, mid-30s, pretty, comfortable with him. Too comfortable. Claire's mouth curled with disgust. He didn't. Eleanor looked up, and for the first time her eyes shimmered, but not from pain, from clarity. Oh, he did. And this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some weekend slip-up. I saw the text, Claire. The pictures. She's not a fling. She was part of a fantasy. A whole new life he wanted, dressed up as a birthday gift for me. Claire stood, unable to sit still. She paced across the kitchen like a kettle just shy of boiling over. I always knew something was off, she muttered. He started calling me less, avoided family dinners. I even asked him at Christmas if you two were okay. He said you were just tired. Eleanor gave a small bitter laugh. Funny. That's what he used to say about his mother before he stopped visiting her in hospice. Claire stopped. She turned slowly. How long have you known? I knew something was wrong the moment she opened the door, Eleanor said. And I knew the moment I saw how he looked at her. It's the way he used to look at me, before I became routine, before he decided I was too worn to love and too old to leave. Claire sat back down, furious now. He chose her over you? After everything? Eleanor reached into her handbag and placed Harold's phone on the table. She had taken it with her, not out of vengeance, but out of need. Need for proof. Need for the truth to be more than just memory. I didn't plan to take it, she admitted, but when he fell asleep I stared at it, and I knew I had to carry the truth with me. I needed someone to see it, to confirm I wasn't going mad. Claire reached for the phone with hesitation, scrolling slowly, reading the messages her father had never meant for anyone to see. Her eyes widened, her fingers froze, and then her expression turned icy. He told her he'd handle you gently, like you were an old pet being put down. Eleanor flinched. Not because it shocked her, but because she had expected something like that. That's how they talk about us, Claire, she whispered. Women who gave everything. We become something to be handled, not respected, not loved. Claire's voice shook. So what do you want to do now? I want to think, Eleanor replied, her voice firm. Not react. I've spent too much of my life reacting, cleaning up after others, smoothing over messes. But this needs intention. Quiet, clear, deliberate. Claire nodded. Do you want me to tell Dad to stay away? Eleanor met her daughter's eyes and finally allowed herself to cry. Not yet, she whispered. First, I want him to wonder what I'm planning. I want the silence to speak louder than anything I could say, because that's what he's never been able to handle. Me, when I stopped playing along. The sun had risen fully now, casting golden light through the window, illuminating the two women, one broken, the other furious, but both determined. And somewhere, hours away, Harold was waking up to an empty bed, a missing phone, and a realization that would soon rattle the world he thought he controlled. The next day, Eleanor sat in Claire's sunroom with a small notepad in her lap. She didn't write anything for a long time, just sat. The house was quiet except for the occasional chirp of a bird outside or the ticking of the antique clock that had once belonged to her mother. Claire walked in, holding a tray of fruit and toast. You haven't eaten much. Eleanor glanced up. I'm not hungry. I'm thinking. Claire set the tray down. Are you planning to call him? Eleanor shook her head. Number not yet. He doesn't deserve my voice right now. Instead, she opened her notepad and wrote a list. Not of what Harold had done, that was etched into her memory already, but of what she had left. Her name was still on every account. Her fingerprints were still on their house, their savings, the joint business investments he had pretended to manage alone. The life he'd built with Bella, it wasn't on new ground, it stood on hers. Claire, she said, tapping the pen gently on the pad, how hard is it to move a few investments around? Claire tilted her head. Why? Because Harold forgot something. Eleanor's voice was low but sharp. He may have gone behind my back, but he never changed the paperwork. I was always the one who handled the bills, the taxes, the assets. He couldn't even figure out our online banking without me. Claire slowly sat down beside her. You want to take him for everything? Eleanor smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was quiet, calculated. Number, I don't want everything. I just want him to feel what it's like to lose something he took for granted. That afternoon, she called their financial advisor from Claire's home office. Gerald was an old friend of both Eleanor and Harold's, loyal but not foolish. I'm reviewing our accounts, she said pleasantly, and I'd like to temporarily freeze any personal withdrawals or property transfers unless I give direct approval. I've noticed some unusual activity. Gerald hesitated. Is everything all right, Eleanor? Not yet, she replied, but it will be. Then she logged into their shared cloud storage and copied every digital record. Emails, real estate contracts, messages. She wasn't sure yet how she'd use them, but she knew one thing. When men like Harold lose control, they scramble. She wanted him to scramble, to wonder. Later that evening, Harold finally called. Claire watched the screen light up with his name. Harold, 14 missed calls. Eleanor didn't answer. Then came the text. Where are you? This isn't funny, Elle. You took my phone? You need to come back. You're being emotional. Bella didn't mean to hurt you. You're overreacting. Claire clenched her jaw. He really said that? Eleanor didn't blink. He's still in the part of the story where he thinks I'll forgive him because I always have. She wrote a short message. Only one sentence. I'll be in touch when I'm ready to speak as your equal. Not your fool. She didn't send it right away. She stared at it for a long time, then hit send. She placed the phone face down on the table. Claire looked at her. What now? Now, Eleanor said, I write the letter. To him? No. She looked at her daughter. To Bella. Claire raised an eyebrow. You're going to write to the woman who tried to replace you? I'm going to make sure she understands what she's inherited, Eleanor said. Harold is charming when he's chasing something, but he's a shadow once he's caught it. I want her to know what it's like to really live with him, the forgetfulness, the excuses, the resentment when he's no longer the center of attention. She pulled out a fresh page and began writing. Dear Bella, congratulations on catching a man who lies in whispers and loves with expiration dates. I wish you all the joy of the late-night apologies, the forgotten anniversaries, the dinners you'll cook alone. You're not special. You're just new, and that shine will fade faster than you think. I'm not broken. I'm not bitter. I'm simply free. Warmly, Eleanor. She folded the paper, placed it into an envelope, and slid it into her handbag. No revenge screams louder than grace paired with truth. And in that moment, Eleanor wasn't a woman abandoned. She was a woman reborn. Pen in hand, power restored. 3 days later, Eleanor heard the knock. Not a timid one, not polite. It was a loud, impatient thudding at Claire's front door. The kind of knock a man uses when he thinks he still has the right to be let in. Claire stood from the living room couch, but Eleanor held up her hand. I'll answer it. Harold stood on the porch, creased shirt, hair unkempt, bags under his eyes. The man who once stood tall and self-assured now looked like a stranger caught in the middle of a storm he couldn't control. Eleanor, he breathed, we need to talk. She opened the door just wide enough to step out. She didn't invite him in. He looked past. Her. You've had my phone. You locked the accounts. You blocked my cards. I went to the pharmacy and couldn't even pay for my medication. Eleanor didn't flinch. And yet you had enough energy to drive up here. He swallowed. Please, let's not do this here. We are doing this here, she said coldly, because you made your choices there, in her house. He took a deep breath. I messed up. I know that. But it wasn't serious. It didn't mean, don't you dare, she cut in. Don't you dare reduce 41 years of marriage to a technicality. You brought me into the home where you kept another woman warm. You let her pour my wine. You kissed her with the same mouth you used to say vows you clearly forgot. I was lost, Elle. Number, you were selfish. Her voice was steady, not shaking anymore. You wanted the comfort of a wife and the thrill of a mistress, and you thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. I always did. I just didn't want to believe it. He looked down, hands trembling. What do you want from me? What do I need to do? She tilted her head. That's the problem, Harold. You're still trying to fix something when you should be owning it. He looked up, eyes desperate. So this is it? 41 years and you're just walking away? I'm not walking away, she said. I'm walking towards something. Peace, dignity, my own name, not tied to yours like a fading shadow. She reached into her purse and handed him an envelope. What's this? He asked. My terms, she said. I already contacted a lawyer. Everything is fair. I'm not taking everything, but I'm taking enough. Enough to make sure you feel the absence of what you threw away? Harold opened the letter and scanned the page. His face went pale. You want the house? He whispered. It was always my grandmother's, she replied. You just lived in it. He stepped back, visibly shaken. So you planned all this. You waited. Eleanor met his gaze. You trained me to wait, Harold. For years I waited for you to come home, to listen, to see me. I waited while you overlooked anniversaries, missed birthdays, avoided counseling. So yes, this time I waited, but not for you. I waited for me. He stood silent. Then Eleanor handed him one more thing. The second envelope. This is for her. Harold looked confused. Bella? Give it to her, she said calmly. She deserves to know what she's inherited. With that, Eleanor turned and walked back inside. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She simply closed it. And that sound, that soft click of finality, was louder than any argument could have been. The following weekend, Eleanor sat in her garden with Claire and her grandchildren. The sun was soft, and the breeze carried the scent of lemon balm and lavender, her favorites. She hadn't felt this kind of stillness in years. Claire handed her a glass of iced tea. You sure you're okay? Eleanor smiled. I'm better than okay. I'm awake. Claire looked relieved. I can't believe how you handled it. I think if it had been me, I would have burned his clothes in the driveway. Eleanor chuckled. That's the difference between reaction and response. I didn't want revenge that left ashes. I wanted a silence he could never explain. She looked toward the rose bush, new blooms coming in. She'd pruned it back months ago. It had looked bare, nearly dead, but it came back stronger. That's what healing looked like. That morning she'd received a message from Bella. I read your letter. I don't even know what to say. I thought he was different. Thank you for your honesty. He told me you'd given up on him, that you stopped loving him years ago. But I see now, he was just trying to rewrite his story. I won't be part of that lie anymore. Eleanor hadn't responded. She didn't need to. Some things were meant to end in silence. Later that afternoon, she stood at the front gate of a small cottage on the edge of town. It had a wide porch, climbing vines, and a garden out front. The for sale sign had been flipped. She turned to Claire. I'm buying it. Claire's eyes widened. Are you sure? So soon. I've waited too long already, Eleanor said. I want something that's mine. Not borrowed, not shared. Mine. Inside, the rooms were small but sunlit. No shadows, no secrets. Just space. Space to think, to feel, to be. She walked through the hallway and paused in front of a mirror. For the first time in years, she saw herself, not as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone holding a household together. Just Eleanor, whole, brave, enough. As she stepped out onto the porch and looked over her new beginning, she thought of the weekend that had broken everything, and then rebuilt her, because sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. Sometimes it clears the path to the life you were too loyal to ever imagine.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.